Okay, so we're at HealthAide Chats. I have Patrick Lee. He was the founder of Rotten Tomatoes, one of the famous sites associated with movie ratings. So I'm Barry, the co-founder and CEO of HealthAide. We aim to democratize health information that's verified by health experts. In this case, we don't have a health expert here, but we have someone who's been there and done that experience. The whole topic around today is preventive health and optimizing your well-being and health for startups or founders who potentially are very busy, are on limited amount of budget, and are strained for potentially many years. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi, thanks, Barry.
It's nice to see you again. So you're now a father, so congratulations. How's everything going there?
Good. My daughter just turned 9 months old yesterday. So
great.
She's great. She's crawling. She's speaking a little bit, like she can say mama, and she's just started saying baba. And yeah, she's amazing.
Great. And have you changed your work schedule since you've become a father, or has it been similar, given that you want to spend more time with your kid?
Well, I think because of COVID, now everything I do is remote. So the nice thing with that is I'm always home now. So I'm able to spend a lot more time, with my wife and daughter than I think I would have if I was still working, in an office or something like that.
Oh, great. And has that impacted your productivity at all, being completely remote? Do you believe in that model for startups at an early stage, or should it be hybrid or more towards depending on what task you have to do in general?
When, pre-COVID, I was a big believer in having everyone in the same office. I just felt like it's easier and faster to kind of stay synced up and coordinated when you can just grab someone, go into a room and talk through and, whiteboard something out. I still feel like that is quite valuable, but I think with COVID and it forced everyone to go remote, I definitely see advantages there too. I mean, it's obviously nice that you can hire people from around the world, assuming you can sync up on the time zones. And you don't even have to have an office depending on the size of your company. That's really nice. People don't have to worry about a commute to work. That's really huge too. So from those perspectives, those are all really nice. Not having to do meetings as often, in person is great, because for the same reasons, like you don't have to worry about commute. Typically, when you meet in person, you want to block off at least like an hour a lot of times. Whereas when it's online, you can kind of back to back like 30 minutes at a time, and it still works, and you can still kind of get everything you need done in that time. So it's just a lot more efficient. As far as productivity, I feel like if the people are able to work kind of on their own, they're good about communication, being able to stay synced up through, WhatsApp, whatever programs you're using, Slack. I think it's definitely doable. If it's to a point where, if it's someone that maybe if they're not being directly supervised or not working, then I think that doesn't work at all. And you can't really have those folks in a remote environment. But if they're very self-motivated and able to work, asynchronously with everyone else, I totally think it's doable.
Great points there. So let's have a look at Patrick's Lee day. So do you have virtual assistants? What apps do you use? How does it go? What time do you wake up? Do you exercise? Do you meditate? Do you practice spiritual things? Do you have self-affirmations? I'd love to hear about Patrick Lee's day.
No, I have, I think, almost none of those things.
Okay.
I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm like any kind of expert or anything around this stuff. For me, I'm trying to get on a better schedule, but typically it's like I'll sleep at like 2 or 3. I still try and give myself 8 hours of sleep. So my day tends to start, I would say, closer to 11. I'll probably do 2 to 3 hours of calls and meetings virtually. Ideally, I use motion to help with scheduling, which is very helpful. I try to have everything bunched up together. So for example, today, all my calls are from 2 to 5, 3 hours of calls, but it's extremely condensed and focused together. That's been very helpful. I try to walk, you know, 3-4 times a week if I can. I'd like to eat better, but it's kind of inconsistent. I try to get, 8 hours of sleep. I use an app called, what's it called? Way of Life, which lets you create different things that you want to accomplish in a day. It's like, and then you can mark it off like with a green or red box or whatever, and you can put notes if needed. And so I use that to track things like, did I exercise? Did I eat well? Did I sleep well, etc. And then it's kind of nice because you can see for the week, how did you do versus the previous weeks? And it gives me a little bit more motivation to try to do those things, because I like it, obviously better when you have more green check marks or whatever. I also use, I think it's called Zero, which is like a fasting app, which is, which is kind of, I'm not like strict on it, but it's kind of nice to know, help track my eating patterns and stuff. I think that's about it for me. I don't use a virtual assistant. I basically use email as my to-do list. So everything I try to, someone asks me to do something, if I don't have time, I'll just email myself to do it. So I track that. And I use Gmail to sort all that stuff out. Gmail, I set it up so that, there's a starred versus the important versus the everything else categories. And so I can star the ones that I really need to get done that day. The everything else is stuff that's like not work related. And then the important is work related, but I don't have to necessarily do it that day. And so I try to, so it helps me prioritize. And then if I'm more busy, what I'll do is I'll only deal with the previous day's kind of tasks, like emails. So any emails that come in today, if it's not urgent, I'll put it into a folder called tomorrow, and I won't worry about it until tomorrow. And that way, when I get up, ideally, I know how many emails I need to go through that day. And that's basically my to-do list. And I can use the priority stuff, like the starring and all that stuff, to help organize when I do what emails went, at what time. And those emails are kind of also like my to-do list.
Oh, wow. So there's a lot of things that you sort of block out and structure your day to make sure you're focused on the task at hand without getting distracted by different things.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, it's still not easy because there's so many like messenger apps and things. I have WhatsApp, Slack, Telegram, Discord, Facebook Messenger, all on my desktop, plus I have a bunch more on my phone. I typically will do a round of all my major apps once in the morning. And so I don't really check them like Instagram and Twitter and stuff. I check it like once a day for the most part. And then I have the ones that I actually need for work all on my computer. And basically my day is try to work through my email, which is also my to-do list. And then if people message me on some random one of these messaging apps, I might, I may respond, but like Slack and Discord for the most part, I also just check it once a day. And unless someone's directly messaging me about something, I'm not gonna worry about it until tomorrow, because it's too easy for those kinds of things to get caught up and be not productive.
Great. So when did you get onto that habit? Did it happen from the start, or you had a problem there and then you're like, oh no, geez, I have to change the way I do things. I can't answer these notifications, every hour or so.
I think as I came, I just would always think about how could I try to be a little bit more efficient on things. I'm pretty OCD, so it's like I don't like to miss anything. But then it got to a point where, trying to maintain inbox zero is difficult if you will answer every email that comes in, but getting to inbox zero I mean, it's still not easy, but it's definitely more doable. If every email that comes in today, you put till tomorrow and you only worry about the previous day, that means when you wake up, like, and you move all your ones from tomorrow in, you're like, I have 30 emails I have to go through today. And at least you have some sense, and you answer those 30 emails, you essentially are inbox 0 for today, right? So there's things like that. I tried to-do list apps. Generally, I found it wasn't that effective for me. So it actually worked much better for me to basically just make my email the to-do list. So if it's like, if I had to remind myself something like, don't forget to buy groceries, I'll just email myself, buy groceries.
That's a really good idea.
It's all in one place. Yeah.
It sort of offloads your brain, doesn't it, at the time? And then,
I've seen people who do it through the calendar.
Yep.
And I will do a lot of meetings and sometimes certain tasks through calendar, but for the most part, I like to just keep an email because my email is always open in front of me, whereas a calendar is like a different tab that I'll jump to if I need to.
Yep. Do you use any visualization tools or things? So for example, when you started Rotten Tomatoes, did you sit there in the woods or something like that and thought about the idea at all? Or did it just come naturally while you're walking around or just in a busy environment?
My co-founder, Sen, was the one.
Sorry.
My co-founder, Sen, was the one who actually came up with the idea for Rotten Tomatoes. So I didn't create the site. We have had times back in the day where we would need to think through something and we would go in, to a conference room, let's say, with a whiteboard, and we could just whiteboard it out. And so we would do that a lot. Yeah. Great.
And how much time do you recommend blocking out for a brainstorm session in general? Or there is no guidelines around that? Is there?
Generally, if it was important, we didn't really have, usually an hour to 3 hours would probably be enough for most things. Some things might take a little bit longer than that, but generally most things you can get to a pretty good spot within that time frame.
Great. And in terms of the founders you've seen, successful ones, what have you noticed consistent with the health or well-being type of regimes or around their organizational skills that you've seen maybe in yourself or others that you could share?
The thing I've realized across all founders, all startups, I believe that is the most critical thing is to be focused and not do too much in the early days, right? So, like Amazon only sold books. They went public selling books, selling only books. Facebook only started in Harvard, right? Google was just simple text search in the beginning. Every fast food chain just sells one type of food, right? Every social media platform started off doing just basically one feature, right? Like Twitter is a status update essentially. And they were all very distinct from one another, right? So what I've seen is generally the best founders, the companies you've seen that are successful, go back to the beginning, they're extremely focused. And when you're extremely focused, you're not biting off more than you can chew. When you don't bite off more than you chew, you have a better chance of doing a really good job with it. But also you can do it within like the time and money constraints that are reasonable. When you bite off more than you can chew, generally you're not going to be able to do it. It's going to take a lot of money and time to do it. And even if you do it, you're not doing a good job on it, right? And that is extremely stressful. And stress is a huge factor that can affect your health.
That's very, very great insights in relation to how we're talking about health. We're talking about, I know the reason why I spoke to you was how you often talk about to the public, doing one thing at a time. And it does relate to your health. I mean, if you're doing 6 things at the same time, how can you do everything as well as each other, or causes more stress? Hence why, I spoke to you around, how do you remove all your distractions and try to structure your day so you can actually focus on one thing at a time, which is probably the theme I'm hearing here. Any other tips you have for founders when they've noticed maybe their mental health is going down, or, they're failing so much as part of the journey? You've seen some articles out there on TechCrunch and things like that, which talk about that loneliness or isolation as a founder. Any insights around that topic, Patrick?
I mean, again, I would say by far the best thing that they can do is focus and not do too many things. And if it's not working, doing more things is not going to help. It's actually probably cutting out things, or even possibly pivoting to something else. But even if you pivot to keep that super focused, doing less is the best way to reduce your stress, right? So that's by far number one. I would say the other thing that can be helpful if you are in a situation where you're pretty stressed out and you're depressed and all those things is the basics. Go back to the basics, like get 8 hours of sleep. If you haven't been sleeping well, you've been sleeping 4 hours a night for like weeks or months, then go and just sleep for like 12 hours straight or something. Unplug a little bit. Even if you're really busy, try to like take a weekend, something, unplug, get some exercise. Improve your diet, right? The problem is usually when you get really busy, your sleep suffers. You don't have time to exercise. Your diet suffers. You're probably doing a lot of fast food and takeout. And that just compounds everything. So yeah, going to basics on those things. The last thing I would say would be, maintaining your network of friends and family. Unfortunately, when you get really busy, you're doing a startup, etc., or something like you had a baby, a lot of times you get so busy, you stop connecting with friends and family. And the problem is when things go bad and you get depressed, you don't have that like support network around you. It's important, regardless of how busy you are, to try to maintain some level of your friends and family around you. These days, people are much more used to Zoom and virtual. At least message with people, text message. If you can do a call, Like if it's someone very close to you, set up a weekly call or at least a monthly call. Things like that. So you at least have someone that you can kind of vent to, share your problems, hear a outside perspective, whatever, and who can be there if you are like depressed, especially if you're extremely depressed, in a dangerous state. Your friends and family need to know about that so they can come and help you, right? So I would say that would be my other thing, right? Is basically those three things: is focus, number one; number two, the basics, exercise, sleep, diet; number three, maintain your connections of friends and family.
Great. And do you recommend having a coach or someone, like engaging in an executive coach or mentor or something like that around it at an early stage? Or
I've never used an executive coach. I did have advisors and some folks who kind of mentored me. I've advised and mentored many companies and founders. I think it can be helpful. It could be helpful from a focus perspective if the advisor or mentor is good about that, or the executive coaches are good around that. I think, but those things, an executive coach costs money, which the startup founder that is extremely stressed, that might be something that's not readily available to them. So, but I think things like setting aside time to exercise, sleep, diet, you don't necessarily need
all the rest of
those.
Being
good about scheduling some time for friends and family. Again, you don't need a coach for that. The focusing, an advisor or mentor, things like that, I think can be helpful for that particular aspect. If that's something that they believe in, and not all of them, know or believe in it.
Last question. So this is an interesting one. I found some founders use it as an escape, like working on their startup as an escape from the, the corporate rat race, grind, etc. Is that a good idea? Is that healthy to say, this is my passion? Do you know what I'm saying? This is where my heart is. And you kind of forget about everything else around you and just work on it after work. You're like your 9-to-5 job, and then you're like smashing it out. You forget about your family and etc. Do you have any thoughts about that? Should your startup be your passion, or should it literally be like a systematic process where you're trying to experiment and solve the problem? Or is the vision your passion there? Or what's your thoughts or your take on that in terms of successful startups? Because you hear a lot, about it should be your passion, or you're going to give up and blah, blah, blah. You should work on it until you're close to lack of sleep. You hear those founder stories consistently. What's your take on that from a reality point of view?
A lot of times a lot of these projects do start off, many of them start off as passion projects, right? Rotten Tomatoes, my co-founder Sen, did it on the side. He was working for us at our design firm.
Yep.
And he came up with it, and he did it in his free time. You know, Yahoo, I think they were at Stanford, and they were doing it for fun on the side. Facebook, right? A lot of times that is something that happens. I think Apple, right? Steve Wozniak was just messing around with the computer stuff for fun. I think passion definitely helps. And if it's something that you're passionate about and you're having fun with, then it's not necessarily a bad thing that you're putting in a lot of time onto it, because you're enjoying it, right? It's like a hobby. I think the main thing is making sure that you still have some balance when you're doing it, that you're not completely ruining your sleep, exercise, diet, you know, not talking to friends and family. I think because those things can be dangerous if you start doing that to an extreme level. But I don't think it's mutually exclusive. But having a passion versus systematically approaching it, you can still be focused with your passion. You can still be systematic and approach it in a way that increases the chance of success of that thing.
Right. And is there a point where you should throw in the towel at all, or do you just keep going?
I would say it depends on what you mean by throwing in the towel. There's two different versions. One is I'm just not going to do a startup, period. And yeah, I think that is really dependent on if you have the time, have the interest, have the money, have the support or not, right? And if you're just like, I'm burned out, I don't want to do this, I don't care about doing a company anymore, I'll just go back to corporate or whatever.
My high paid
then that's fine.
Yeah.
And then the other version is your particular idea. And it could be like, I want to do a startup, but this one's not working. Let me try some pivots around this idea, or let me just stop this idea and start a whole new idea, you know? And so you can consider that to be kind of giving up, but I think that's actually pretty normal to be pivoting when you're trying to come up with a company. Rotten Tomatoes was my third company. You know, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he did multiple ideas before he happened on Facebook. You look at like Max Levchin with PayPal, like he had worked on a bunch of random ideas before PayPal. It's pretty normal to experiment and pivot. And it can be actually a bad thing if something's not working and you just keep pushing away at it and it's just not getting there. And the numbers and everything and the data and everything are telling you it's not working.
Great. All right. Thanks for all those great insights and wisdom, Patrick. Hopefully our audience will enjoy that and find some kind of useful tips there they can actually act on from a real world, been there, done that experience. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks you for having me.
No problems.